All right, listeners. Well, I have a special treat for you. I have a buddy of mine. I've actually known this guy for a long time, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in the home inspection business. I have Dale Raines with me this evening. How you doing, Dale?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Preston.
Awesome. I know I've been wanting to interview Dale for a long time, and I hope I don't get him in trouble or get in trouble with my own wife because it is Valentine's Day. But I took care of all that earlier, flowers and all that stuff. Are you good? You're not. Hope you're not getting in trouble, Dale. Are you getting in trouble?
I'm not getting in trouble. We're going to make up for it big time on Friday.
Oh, good. That's smart. Yeah, actually, I was going to get reservations. I tried to get reservations, and it was just crazy. And my wife said the same thing. She was like, let's go out Friday night because kids got school, and it's just crazy, and Friday night will be easier. So we're celebrating it on Friday as well.
Yeah, it works better that way. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, Dale, tell us a little bit about you because, I know you, and we've been to a lot of conferences and stuff, but our listeners don't. So tell us a little bit about you. How'd you get to where you are, and how'd you become a home inspector? But, start from the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning. I was a very young child. No, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I'm married to Monica, my beautiful wife, for 36 years almost now, come July 2nd. Got one daughter, Erica. She lives out in Boston. And right now we just have 3 occupants, a 15-year-old Sheltie, a 1-year-old, and a 6-month-old Pomeranian. And so they're little fur babies for the time. I live in Michigan, Trenton, Michigan, just south of Detroit. And I guess personally, I'm actually kind of an introvert. I don't have I don't get a charge out of going out and meeting a bunch of people. So I am kind of quiet. I'm the guy who's kind of quiet in the back of the room, just talking with a few people at a time. I just don't like people in big numbers and big social events. It's just not my cup of tea. I try to be personable, at least sometimes. And I'd much rather sit down one-on-one with somebody and talk than try and make conversation or be the center of attention. It's just not the way I roll. It just seems like the conversations are a little bit more real, a little bit more personal. I kind of like the behind the scenes stuff as opposed to being up front and center. I like to know how things work and why they work the way they do. I'm kind of nuts and bolts kind of person. Didn't know that when I was younger, but I kind of figured it out over time. Competitive, but I'm not real loud about it. I don't like being too braggadocious. Love playing sports, although I was never very talented, as you can see, I'm like a huge specimen here. I think your arms are bigger than my legs.
Oh, please.
But I've always loved playing sports, and I've always been on the better teams, not because I was so talented, but because I was kind of level-headed and I can get the other guys to play better.
Right.
I was always on pretty good teams, even though it wasn't always much of a help. I was looking at some of the idea questions that you gave me earlier, and I don't even know really where the home inspection thing came from. I know when I was little, I wanted to have all the fun stuff. I wanted to be an astronaut or a ball player or a fireman or a police officer. But I think by high school, I was 10th grade, I weighed 95 pounds. So thank God for the wrestling team. Otherwise, I wasn't able to participate in any sports. My dad was an engineer, and that's kind of what my background's been for 20 some odd years before becoming a home inspector. So I did some part-time work for his engineering and surveying company in high school, but I didn't want to work for my dad. My God, that would be horrible, having to work for your dad. So
I work for my dad. It is horrible. Trust me.
You know what?
People, you just yell at me.
Yeah, of course I do. And the thing is when you work for your dad, they expect more out of you, and the fellow employees don't trust you. They think sure.
Yeah. You get it bad on both ends.
But in my early 20s, I had a small furniture store that did pretty well for a while until we had the big trucking strike, or the railroad strike and the trucking strike. And all 8 stores around me, because that was kind of a cottage industry back, or there was a lot of small stores back then.
Right, right.
Mega stores. And when the 8 stores around me went out of business, I couldn't do 8 times the advertising.
Right.
People coming in. And so eventually, being newly married and having a little kid, I decided that maybe I shouldn't do that anymore, because we have to put food on the table.
Sure.
Then I was a car salesman. So that was a trip. Actually made pretty good money at it, but back then I wasn't a shooter, and they just wanted people who threw numbers, and they just said I took too long on my sales. So that's how it goes. Nowadays, if you had somebody like the old salesman, they'd fire them in a heartbeat.
Right.
Things change. Ultimately, I made my way back into engineering simply because I was able to work with the mainframe computer at Wayne State University. And I worked on their mainframe computer, or did some programming with that mainframe computer, while I was busy flunking out of college 3 times. So it ended up, the college did actually help me with about 22 years of my career. So I became one of the first CAD draftsmen in Detroit way back when, and actually ended up running a CAD department with about 8 draftsmen.
Nice.
Then programming software was advancing so quickly that all of a sudden engineers could draw, and you don't need draftsmen. So then I spent the next few years training all the replacements for my draftsmen, and eventually myself. So by then it was we were been around for quite a few years, and we have some bills. And I had built my own house and decided to maybe become a builder. Now, this was about 2007, and the economy was crashing. So I decided I did not want to be a builder. Besides, I hated subcontractors.
Yeah.
Guys who built my house. So I was trying to figure out where I was going to go before I got laid off. And I saw an ad for home inspections. I'm like, man, I like homes. My first home was horrible, but there weren't inspections way back then.
Right. Everybody worked for the seller. Everybody worked for the seller.
The second home I built, and I'd taken classes, and I had built, and I had a pretty good idea about it, and it was actually a halfway decent home. It's still standing. So, but I was like, man, that first home, it was 13 years old, but it was a total piece of junk, and it seemed like we were always working on it. And when
POS is the right acronym.
POS, yes. So I was always working on it, and of course, back then I didn't know that the list never goes away.
Right.
I didn't know what was happening, so things would break because I didn't know what to look for and stuff like that. So, so I ended up. I thought, well, if nothing else, my new house that I had built was about 10 years old, and things were starting to happen to it, and I was like, I don't want to go through this again. So I took the home inspection class just simply so I could keep my house up. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So I took it.
Where'd you take it, Dale? Where'd you take it through?
Oh, I took it through Middleton Real Estate School.
Okay.
The class was actually sponsored by the Construction Association of Michigan.
Okay.
So between what I had learned building the house, trying to learn how to fix houses when I was younger, I thought this might be a good fit. And I knew that I wasn't going to retire out of the engineering profession. So I started inspecting part-time in 2004, and in 2008, I had gained a little bit of a following, enough to be able to step off that cliff and start the business full-time.
Right.
And it was a little rough at first, but everything is when you're first learning. So.
Sure. Couple of questions for you. Now, do they have licensing in Michigan, or is it? I know some states do and some don't. Are you guys licensed there? And if so, how do you get it?
Michigan is a non-licensed state. So
Okay.
You can become a home inspector just by printing up some business cards, and some of them probably do. what I've found, though, that actually most of the inspectors that I've run across in Michigan are pretty well qualified. Most of them have some sort of a construction background. But without licensure, I find that although people don't ask very much, it's always really good to belong to one of the major associations.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. I mean, I'm licensed. I mean, we're licensed in North Carolina and South Carolina, but everybody I talk to in states that aren't licensed, it's kind of like some of those association certifications sort of kind of take the place of that. Well, that's good to know that most of the guys you talk to are pretty well qualified.
Generally, I was speaking with a friendly competitor a few months ago, and he says, well, we got 100 new home inspectors in Michigan this year. And I says, that's okay. We lost 105 last year, so we're okay.
Well, I hope none of them died or anything.
No.
Well, and speaking of that, I wanted to back up on your dogs. I mean, when you start out, and I don't want to bring a buzzkill, but we lost our dog 2.5 weeks ago. And that's why one reason I want to do it on this, my phone is blowing up because my kids are trying to talk my wife into a certain type of dog. We're in the process of getting a new dog. So I might ask you off the air about Pomeranians and stuff. But our dog was 13 and we love all that. So we're in the market for a new dog, but my wife wants one type, my daughters want another type, and there's a whole lot of strong-headedness in my family, including myself, and it's not a good mix. So I might have to move my phone because it's like beeping off they're texting back and forth. But anyway, I didn't mean to get too far off there. Well, Dale, for all the listeners, owns Accutech Inspections. Dale, tell us something, and I've known Dale, and he's true when he says he's not like loud or boisterous, or wears crazy pants or something like that crazy guy who does that. I don't know who does that.
No idea.
So that guy is really an introvert leading an extrovert life. So I'm telling you the truth. But when Dale talks, he's kind of like E.F. Hutton. I've always thought he always has something really good to say, and you should listen.
Thank you.
So, Dale, tell us something maybe that you do a little bit different in your inspection company that you think there's a lot of inspectors out there. What would be something you think you do a little bit different?
I don't know if I do anything that's really different. I do have a couple thoughts on that, though. First, I believe I'm not just an inspector.
Okay.
I'm a teacher as well. Anybody can go into a house and say, this is wrong, that's wrong, do this, do that. Most of them don't say do this, do that because they're afraid to. But what I try to do is, because I kind of, when I was building my house, I just seeing the interrelation between the systems in the home, how the things have to work together, and how one thing can affect other complete systems. I just, all those pieces kind of fit together in my head. So I tend to, first, I believe I'm, like I said, not just an inspector, but a teacher. What I try to do, really, really do, is have the people stay with me. I know it takes a little bit more time, but it has a lot of lasting benefits. In our area, it's very common for the buyer's agent and the buyer to be at the entire inspection. I know that varies in different parts of the country. And for me personally, that works best because I don't like phone calls later.
Me either.
And when you're with a client and you're looking at the house, I always ask a lot of questions. I want to keep them involved, and I want to let them know that they can ask me anything, because the more questions they ask, the more they trust you, and the more they trust your opinion. And then even if something comes up 3 or 6 months down the line, they're going to believe you more. Right. It's the entire inspection process is not only a way to make money for my family, keep a roof over my head, but it's a way for them to learn about the house and also to become a trusted resource for the clients, so that when something does happen, which it inevitably will, you're already starting out on a better foot. I try to determine if people have a good knowledge of homes and how they're put together, if they're the DIY type, or if they're going to be the kind of person who's just going to pick up the phone and spend a lot of money to get something fixed.
Right.
Because it's going to make a difference in how I want to present to them. And the only way you do that is when you're talking to them. I try to do, all the typical things. I want to always walk the roof so long as it's safe, go in the crawl space. Crawl spaces, you have a lot of crawl spaces there. We have,
unfortunately, yes, we do.
We have basements, so like crawl spaces are like, they're horrible. They're terrible. God, I don't want to go there. I'm kind of skinny, so I can get into most crawl spaces that a lot of other guys can't. So I kind of use that to my advantage a little bit. And then I do have technology. I've got the crawl bot and some technology that I use when I need to, but I'm not real good with that yet. I'll probably get it crashed and stuck and have to pay a little kid to crawl under the house to get it for me. So,
you have a little line. Do they have a little line connected to it just in case you could pull it out or something? I don't know.
No, it would end up getting wrapped up around the wheels.
Oh.
So then it could get stuck, or it could get stuck on something. So another thing that I've done, and this is just something that many years ago my dad said, is he said, it's always good to be a big fish in a little pond. And so one of the things I do is I know that you have a very large company with many inspectors, so you've got a really big pond. But really, if you think about it, what you try to do is take that really big pond and break it down into a bunch of little ponds where you can fish in each of those ponds.
Right.
Right now, there's only one of me, so I only have one pond. I don't have, what do you have, 90 inspectors now? No.
Yeah, just imagine all right, so how many complaints you get, and I know it's not a lot. Imagine that times however many. That's the downside of that, though.
Times 1.2, because they're only 80% of what you are. We all know that.
Right.
So, anyways, so one of the things I wanted to do to try and keep overhead down a little bit and stuff was kind of limit my marketing, pick my space, and then just try and dominate that space. So I'm only in 10 or 12 offices, which would probably have you fall out of your chair because you're probably in about 1,200. But I go pretty deep in those offices. And the biggest thing I look to do is get one or two of the big fish in those offices. Because if they use me as new people and newbies come in, then I can attract those people because they want to do what the successful people are doing. So always working towards trying to be on the best realtors teams. And I know a lot of people don't like working with real estate agents, but ultimately, if you're going to grow the company and you're going to be consistent, and when I say grow the company, become multi-inspector, which is in my plans, you have to be able to go where the clients are. And at this point in time, the real estate agents have the clients. We may be able to change that someday, and I'm looking forward to that. I do, in some of the things I do, I try to be, to cover all the bases and be a complete solution. So I do provide some warranties. A lot of people don't like them. They think they're a sham. I do know that in many, many, many cases, things have broken after the fact they've been fixed. So I like that. I like the fact that I can provide those warranties. And I like the fact that when I'm on a roof that's maybe it's 12, 14, 15 years old, I can let the people know that, hey, listen, if there is a roof leak, there's a good sized deductible, but if there's a leak, you've got some help. And to do that kind of stuff. The biggest thing is if you're going to do a program like that, you have to be 100% transparent. Yeah. So and it's one thing I always try to let people know. I'm going to say, hey, this is how it works, and this is how we do it, and this is, and it works really well. And probably since I started doing that program, the last 4,000 inspections or so, I've had one complaint. And the whole reason is I let them know about how the program works.
Sure.
because I'm right up front. I literally spend 5 minutes going through every single thing and how it works before we even get started. So the biggest thing is being straightforward with people, down to earth, let them know how things work, and trying to define, the limits of what we're doing.
Setting expectations, or the driveway speech, or I guess is what some people call it.
The driveway speech. Exactly.
Yeah, I think if people aren't there, I've never actually tracked it, but just I know more complaints come from people who weren't at the inspection versus people who were there, and you got to talk to them, and you got to set the expectations, and just really, I think there's a loss. And then I know a lot of guys out there are like, well, I don't want people to be at my inspection, but I'm telling you, like you said, it's a chance to be an educator, and it's going to lead to less complaints down the road, higher customer satisfaction. I encourage people to come. I mean, I know it takes a little bit longer, but I think you're doing a better job. You're providing more value, and their satisfaction is higher. I want to back up on something you said, Dale. You mentioned that realtors have the clients now, but you alluded to the point that may change. And I'm with you. And I don't want to get too far down this road because we'll get off the thing, but I think disruption is coming. We've certainly seen it in many businesses. I mean, I remember when my girls and I used to go to Blockbuster all the time, and get movies. That's gone. I mean, Netflix disrupted that. Now I haven't taken a taxi cab and I don't know how long. I have an Uber app. I just go on there to Uber. I mean, there's still taxi cabs around. Fortunately, I've always said, I was like, they don't have a robot yet that can do a home inspection. But I think the sources of our referrals is going to change. There's like this big team moving in here from Atlanta, and I actually talked to them, and they flat told me, they said, you know what, we're a technology company doing real estate. And it's like technology companies are moving into everything because they, if you can go on your app, I mean, everything's going to be done from a person's phone. And if there's an easier way to do things, I mean, we just got to figure out how to get ahead of that. Fortunately, I still think everything needs a home inspection, and I don't think we're there yet where artificial intelligence can go in and evaluate things. But I do think the sources of our referrals is going to change. And I don't know if you have them there in Detroit, but we got these companies moving in that are basically like they'll buy your house, no showings, no anything. It's basically like CarMax. And if you think about it, that's pretty smart because if they can come in and buy it, they got 6% to play with. But you don't have to show it, you don't have to clean it up or anything. So if they offer you 94% of the value, that's what you would have got because you have to pay 6%, with a realtor. So I don't know. I didn't want to get too far into that, but do y'all have some of those companies coming into your area as well?
Haven't seen them yet, but Detroit is a very depressed market. So 6% on a $110,000 ranch is a whole lot different than 6% on a $450,000 split level.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, they're coming. There's a bunch of them. I mean, I don't know if I want to get into them on here, but I can name 5 or 6, and they're all kind of the same. About 3 of them are in our market, but Atlanta, I think, has all of them. Some of the places out west.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, at first I was like, man, I don't like this, but then again, it's evolution. I mean, everything, technology is, if it can save time or money, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. So we just have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dale, what advice would you give to somebody, some of our listeners are just starting out in the business today with the knowledge you have? What advice would you give them?
I would say pay particular attention to your studies, what you're learning. There's a lot of really good schools out there, either in person or even some good like AHIT online and the actual schools, the ASHE schools. There's some good online resources. But just know that when you get out of those courses, you might be able to pass a test.
Right.
Now your real education is actually beginning. I know that I bought a furnace on my second inspection. So that was fun.
I hear you. I bought a few myself, and it's
Yeah.
fun, all right.
Yeah, part-time, it took me like 3 years to pay off. Well, I bought half a furnace. It took me like 3 years to pay off half a furnace. It was horrible. So,
Oh, but you know what? I tell my guys, you get burned on something, you'll never get burned on that one thing again. You'll get burned on something else. I bet you haven't missed the furnace in a while.
no, I haven't.
I bet it's burned in the back of your mind.
Yeah,
Oh,
those payments on my credit card because it was a new company. I didn't have any credit. So,
right. I hear you, brother.
oh,
Well, Dale, what's the best advice you ever got? I'll flip that around a little bit.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what. The best advice I ever got was literally the big. Well, first of all, this is a service industry, so adopt a service mentality or a servant mentality.
Right.
Our job, quite honestly, is to serve our clients and do the very best job we can. And
Right.
we go out there with a big head, and we start trying to show off what we know because our client doesn't know something. And all we're going to do is we're going to distance ourselves from them. We're going to scare them. And we won't be in business. The only way that you ever stay in business is by providing a good quality service and helping people to make the best decisions for themselves and to purchase that home that they really truly love, but they're maybe a little bit scared about. So, be complete, be honest, be faithful in your work, and just try to give the best service you can to help people. So that's my big thing. I don't. You can always work on your methodology and constantly improving your understanding of how homes work and new features that come in homes. But the bottom line is to be successful, you have to give people the peace of mind that they're actually looking for, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. They need to be happy with what you've given them and told them. So.
Awesome. I want to add to something you said there. I was in Lowe's the other day. Lowe's, Home Depot. They had a whole section of the store on smart homes. I mean, I got a feeling pretty soon. And we have those Wi-Fi. I bought the Wi-Fi temperature thing. Love them. I could set the temperature and all the rooms. But I think pretty soon, I mean, everything's going to be that way. I think there's going to be a day when you can turn on your oven from your phone. Preheat your oven. I really think it wouldn't take much. You just have to have a Wi-Fi oven and then an app. I think you're going to see that everywhere. I mean, I don't know how that'll change how we do an inspection. I mean, we can't check Wi-Fi connections. I guess we could, but I'm telling you, we're going to run our whole lives from our phone someday.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised within 10 to 20 years that I wouldn't be surprised to see embedded chips. I swear, it's scary, but I wouldn't be surprised.
There's some company up in Wisconsin that does that now. I don't know. There's a line there where I'm like, I like to get lost sometimes. There's times I don't want to be found. But anyway, yeah, my wife has that Life 360, and I had it. And she's like, "Why'd you spend 37 minutes in Walmart?" And I was like, "Super Walmart? I'm surprised I didn't spend longer."
Exactly.
But anyway, Dale, we got one more question, and we're up against the break here. You know as well as I do that if you do enough inspections, you're going to have an unhappy camper. And it sounds like you got a pretty good track record. You don't have many. But, it's going to happen. And especially if you get somebody working for you, it's going to happen. How do you handle an unhappy camper? Do you have a process? What's that look like?
Well, first of all, I do have a process. Everybody has unhappy campers, and there's really not much you can do about it because no matter what you tell them, they have expectations that are unrealistic. So the biggest thing, I've got a process in place. First of all, I use a full-time call center because they're trained to handle unhappy people. And then they will text me with the complaint and the client's phone number. What I do is real simple. As soon as I finish an inspection or whatever, I just call and say, hey, I received a message a little bit ago. I was inspecting. I have some, and I was inspecting, and I heard that you have some questions, and you're upset. How can I help you?
Right.
Absolutely keywords. How can I help you?
Nice.
I let them know I'm, currently in the car or whatever. But I wanted to speak with them as quickly as I could, even though I'm in the middle of work.
Right.
Then the not so fun part happens, and that's you just let them vent, let them get it off their chest. And sometimes it's only a couple of minutes, sometimes it's a half an hour.
Sometimes you have to have a drink while it's going on.
Yeah, exactly. You let them yell and scream and swear, or whatever it is that they have to do until
Right.
they run out of energy. Once they finally run out of gas, and they always end it, what are you going to do about that? And I said, and it's very simple. So let me see if I understand what you're saying. Such and such happened, and I repeat back everything that they said, and I let them confirm that I understand what they're saying, and of course they're going to agree with what I say, and then I don't answer any accusations at all. I don't commit to do anything. I just let them know, hey, right now I'm driving, I'm between inspections, I'm any excuse I can make. I did that inspection 3 months ago or 3 years ago. That was 100 or 500 inspections ago. I really can't remember everything. But I'm going to go home, I'm going to pull the inspection report, and I'm going to give you a call.
Smart.
When I pull the inspection report, and then I call them back, first of all, they're flabbergasted that you actually called back because they think I'm just putting them off.
Yeah, and they're not as hot now as they were. You let them vent. They're deflated a little bit.
Exactly. Let them get it out of their system. Let them think about it. 9 times out of 10, it's in the report.
It is.
So
they don't read the report anymore.
So if it's in the report, we talk to them about it, and then we say, hey, listen, it's in there. We talked about it. Here it is. I showed it to you. And It's on page 22 right there with 3 pictures of the problem.
Right.
I probably overdo it with pictures, but they saved my butt so many times.
Me too. You can't take too many pictures, I think.
So it goes 2 ways then. I help them figure out how to get it fixed, and then I ask them for a testimonial that I helped them after the fact. Or B, I missed it, and I make an appointment to come out. There's the last man theory that goes on in all of this. The last man they talked to was a guy trying to get a few $1,000s out of them.
They believe the last person they talked to.
So the last person has the most credence. So I make sure that I go out of my way to go to their house, sit down, talk with them one-on-one, check it out. Hey, maybe I look at it and I'm like, whoa, I made a mistake. We'll just take care of it. Anybody in the business should have a contingency fund of some sort, because as hard as we try, we're never going to catch everything, and things happen. So, yeah.
And it's a numbers game. I mean, I think average inspector misses $2,000 worth of stuff a year. And it won't come in as a neat 2,000. You'll have one year it's like 100, 200, 300. You'll have one year it's like 5,000. That's just the way it happens. But I think I've heard somewhere the average is like 1,800 to 2,200, somewhere in that. So, I mean, if you're under that over a 5-year period, you're doing pretty good. But, when I hear these inspectors say, I never, ever had a complaint, I'm like, it's one or two things. Either A, you don't do many inspections, or B, you're not telling the truth. Because, I mean, you can be the best inspector in the world, and, I mean, it's just –
you're looking at thousands of things in a home. I mean,
and there's a bunch of needles in a haystack, and not to mention you're going to have a contractor come in there and rip something open and say you missed something that you didn't and throw you under the bus. That's going to happen to anybody. And thank you, Mr. Former stripper, Canadian inspector, TV star, for putting that on our profession. But I won't say any names because I don't want to get in trouble, but it seemed like the whole premise of that show was to throw the former inspector under the bus who, they didn't have the wall. I mean, now you've ripped the wall off. Of course, nobody can see that. But anyway,
absolutely,
don't get too far down there. But we're going to get into some good times and some tough times, Dale. But first, let's pause just for a second for our sponsors.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I am back here, guys, with Dale Raines of Accutech Inspections in Detroit, Michigan. I've known Dale probably, I would say, about going on 10 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. Been going to several conferences, and like he described at first, he's not going to be the loudest guy in the room. I could be accused of that sometimes, but I'm actually, I always tell people, I mean, honestly, I am an introvert. Yeah, I can go out there and I can turn it on, but it exhausts me. But Dale is the type guy that when he talks, he's made some very observations. You should listen to him because he's a thinker and he's the type guy that I want to listen to. That's why I really wanted to get him on the podcast. Well, Dale, tell us about one of the toughest times you've ever had in your business. What'd you learn from it?
Well, I think the toughest time was when I got laid off from the engineering company because I was about a year out from where I wanted to be, to make that step. So life has a funny way of kind of speeding things up or slowing things down on you. And in that case, it sped it up really, really good. So I think I had done 85 inspections the year before, part-time, so I was doing about 1 1/3 a week.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was a while ago.
You're marketing now.
I think the average inspection fee back then was right around under $300 in our market. Is about $250.
So you're averaging about $325 a week at an inspection.
I was grossing about $325 a week or $400 a week, just enough not to be able to get unemployment.
Right.
And only, I don't know, about $800 a week less than what I was making before. So it was a little bit of a rough time. But what I just realized was I wasn't going to retire as a draftsman or as a drafting leader or chair in an engineering company because that job went the way of the buggy with manufacturers. So I was. So what I did learn really quickly as we sold off lots of possessions and eliminated debt was don't live beyond your means. Just I didn't have any safety net set up because even though I knew things were coming, I had gotten myself to the position where I couldn't work my way out fast enough. So always be very, very careful. But the other things I figured out was in tough times, you got to get to work. You got to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to make things happen. And also when you have a dream, when you figured out what you want to do, you don't give up no matter what. You just figure out what you're doing wrong. I can't count how many thousands of mistakes I probably made, but you don't give up. You just keep working through and fine tuning and you just persistence pays.
Yeah, definitely.
When the recession hit and all of a sudden there were no houses to sell, they were all in foreclosure, and we went through that whole time before the banks started releasing homes again. That's when I grew the most. And really again, back to persistence pays. The reason I grew the most is people gave up. They just gave up. Yeah. I'm like, well, if you're going to give up, you don't deserve the business. That's how it is in the real world. It's like when you got your first job and they were like, no, you have to work now. It's the same thing. The other thing is look for people who can help you, people to mentor you close by. Get in a mentorship group. I joined Mike Crow, MIC. I needed somebody who'd already been there to help me get through those points. Professional athletes and Olympians have teams of coaches to help them. Sure. In our industry, we're supposed to be so smart that we can figure it all out ourselves. Come on, give me a break. Smart. And the only way you learn is through making mistakes. So let's try and use some other people's mistakes to help us learn too. Maybe it'll minimize our mistakes or make them less devastating.
Yeah, well, they call it hacking the learning curve or something. If you can learn from others' mistakes.
And then the other thing is you can make your business what you want it to be.
Right.
You can change your mind. You can make it something else. I never, ever wanted employees simply because I was middle management before. But now as I'm getting a little bit older, now I'm thinking about it as I'm crawling in an attic or in a crawl space at 60 years old. So it makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Makes a little bit of a difference when the knees hurt for 2 days after a crawl space. So, and the other thing is, ask. Other people will help you. People will share their experiences with you. So, when you go through those tough times, don't pull back. That's the time when you have to step out and you have to ask. That's all.
Absolutely. And I want to say to all the listeners out there, there's nothing wrong with being a one-man shop. I mean, there's certain days like yesterday that I think being a one-man shop is a lot smarter than what I'm doing. But, I go back and forth. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. But, there is nothing wrong with being a one-man shop. I'm going to tell you that, there's pluses and minuses for both. Dale, do you have social media? I know you're on Facebook, and, we were talking about how business is changing. For all listeners out there, if you're not on social media, I know it's good to be romantic about the way things were, but I think in this day and age, you just about have to be. What social media do you have, Dale, and do you have any tips for any of the listeners out there?
For me, it's always keep it simple, stupid, because there's only, at this point, there's only the one of me. So I want to keep things simple. And I've only got a couple of rules for social media. You got to be there and you got to be visible, both personally and as a business, because people want to relate with people. They don't want to relate with the business, but you need to have that personal relationship to get people to pay attention to your business page. So you need both pages. And then, don't do or say anything that you wouldn't want your mother or your grandmother to read to their friends in church. I don't know why. Just be upbeat, be positive, always have a good message, have something that people can learn from. I've got the social media. I'm on Facebook. I have an Instagram account, but I don't really know how to use it. I have Snapchat. That totally confuses me.
I don't get Snapchat. That's the thing with the youngins now. I'll tell you, my kids have tried. The whole keeping, what is it, like streaks. I'm like, why? But I know I said the same thing about Facebook. I'm trying to be open-minded. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And then, of course, I have a YouTube channel. So that's where I put a lot of maintenance videos and little things. If I run across something, a sump pump discharge that's going the wrong way or whatever. That's what I do with the YouTube channel. And try to belong to local groups in your service area. There is a group in our area called Downriver and Friends. It's 62,000 people.
Wow.
That are either in or associated with and know people in the Downriver area. In that group, so long as you just don't go out and do a blatant advertisement, we'll let you post. So guess where all of my maintenance tips and videos go for free? This is actually the freebie, my low cost tip here. Find the groups where people are putting out referrals, and that's all this is hey, I'm looking for a neurosurgeon to fix my hand. Who's had good experiences and with which doctor? I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that. I need some mold cleaned up. I need some testing. I need a home inspection. 62,000 people. There's only 5 home inspectors who get even mentioned on that site. And I get mentioned 2 to 3 times as much as any of the other ones simply because I'm there.
Being helpful, and adding value.
I'm giving free help and advice and things just simply so that I can stay front and center with them.
That is good advice for all social media. Be helpful, add value, and don't be so salesy. But by giving value, people know what you do, and you'll become the perceived expert. I think the go-to guy. That's what you want.
Someday when I write my book, But and then just like I said, just keep your name in front of the people who put a roof over your head. So again, at this point in time, the people who put a roof over my head and have my customers are real estate agents. But again, that can change very quickly, like your Blockbuster example.
Yeah.
So things can happen very, very quickly. Just stay nimble and try and keep your ears open and your mind open and your ears working, because right now, if you want an older group, it's Facebook, because everybody else has migrated to Instagram and to Snapchat.
I just have not figured out how to do Snapchat for business yet. I'm going to, but golly, I mean, I've tried it like 3 different times, and I did it for like a week, and I just couldn't keep up with it. It was too much work. But I'm going to try again.
I'm going to find one of my realtor friends who has a teenager, and I'm going to have them teach me how to do it. That's how to do it.
Snapchat's the thing. I hear you. Well, Dale, how do you overcome price shoppers? I know a lot of our listeners. Yeah, hey, how much you charge for a home inspection? Next, how much you charge for? That's obviously, we don't want to become the Walmart of home inspection. How do you? Somebody calls you. First question is, how much you charge? Well, how do you handle that?
Okay, this is going to sound almost arrogant, but I don't mean it to sound that way. But the agents who refer me or who put me on their referral list, I always tell them, hey, just let them know up front I cost a little bit more because I do more. And it's very, very simple. And that knocks down about half of it right there. But again, they're people many of them I've worked with for now 9-10 years. So they know my work. They know I'm very consistent. They know I'm going to do the job, and they know I'm going to take care of something if it goes wrong. So they don't have a problem saying, our lawyers say we're supposed to do 3, but after you spec right there on the top, they seem to do a lot of work.
See, you take bold letters up front. That may be the one you want to go with. Wink, wink.
And quite honestly, I don't price match. I don't, and it's not that I don't have to or that I can't. I won't do it because I don't want to take the industry down to the least common denominator.
Nice.
Now, I failed math like 12 times in college, so I don't even know how I know that word. But I will discount on occasion, but I'm not going to match a low baller just to get the deal. And I'm like, so what's the best price that you've gotten so far? And so, oh no, I can't even come anywhere near that. I'm $150 higher. And they're like, what? You're how much? I says, well, there's different levels, and sometimes if the house is really great and you know exactly what it is, you can do McDonald's. But sometimes you're going to need Ruth Chris Steakhouse. You're going to have that extra, and that's what I'm here for. Because the kind of work I do, I'm not going to be in and out of the house in an hour and a half, and you're not going to have your report till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, well, and I'll give you a good example of that, Dale. The place where my wife gets her haircut, the guy who owns the shop is kind of like a local celebrity. Do you know how much it costs to get him to cut your hair versus like everybody in that shop? It's a different price depending on how long they've been around, how well known they are, and they're all busy. So it's kind of like, if you want the one guy who's kind of like the Paul Mitchell of Charlotte, I mean, it's going to be $200, and you're going to have to wait a long time. And you might have to come at some crazy hour. And you know what? He's booked out the yazoo. I mean, he could probably even charge more. It's just he's been around. He's built his reputation. He's good. I don't know why it shouldn't be that way with home inspectors too. I mean, do you want a $200 haircut or you want a $12 haircut? There is a difference. I mean, there's a difference. I mean, this guy knows the shape of your face, your eye color, your thing. I mean, he matches everything. I mean, he's great.
He's not a hairstylist. He's an artist.
Exactly. So good stuff. Well, Dale, we talked a little bit about referral sources, possibly the future of that. How do you think, and I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, but how do you think the home inspection business will change in the future? You had to guess 5, 10 years.
I believe, quite honestly, that as we migrate from a cottage industry into a true profession. And I believe it is a true profession, and there are true professionals in our industry. I believe that we're going to see larger firms, more like yours. And we're going to move away from the mom and pop shops, and we're going to get into multi-inspector firms. I see a lot more use of technology in the industry, not just, cloud-based inspection reports and things like that. But I mean, it's almost 10 years ago, if somebody had a moisture meter, it was a miracle.
Yeah.
And now
everybody's got infrared almost.
Everybody's got infrared moisture meters. The technology is going to continue to improve, and the cost of technology is going to probably continue to slide. So we're going to be able to do a whole lot more and provide a much better service for a lower cost for ourselves, but we should be able to parlay that into something that could actually be more profitable. The big thing is we need dinosaurs around to make ourselves look good. And there will always be dinosaurs. So
just call me T-Rex.
You're not a dinosaur. You have all the cool stuff. You got all the cool toys. I don't even have a drone because I live so close to the airport. So
I tell you, man, I got a drone. I got a couple of them. I love them, but I'm in the middle of taking that license right now, like taking the thing. And I realized I have flown this thing illegally a lot. And I'm thinking I need to probably take some of my videos off the thing. I didn't know I was a hobbyist. I mean, you can fly. It's a long story, but you have to call and get permission.
So I'm going to take the course before I even buy a drone. Just have to. Because probably 50% of my inspections are within that 5-mile barrier that you can't fly.
You can get, though, I mean, you can get I think you can call and get a permission, I'm just doing a roof. I'm not going more than 100 feet. You
can file a flight plan, and you can tell them I'm going to be flying in about a 200-foot radius around such and such a coordinate at such and such an elevation, where you're not going to be anywhere near anything. But you have to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Not that
call me or email. I got a promo code for that, Dale. If I'm doing Drone Pilot 101, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I have a promo that's good through March. It's $149, but I have a promo that's like $50 off. It's $99. And it's 9 hours. You just do it as you. It's pretty good. John Bolton turned me on to it. I was at the inspection room. But it's good, man. It's good. But I'll text you that promo code if you're interested. I mean, I think there's a bunch of good ones out there. But $99, and I think it's good. That's a good deal.
I honestly believe the future is in the technology. I also believe that as houses become more complex, our education is going to be, requirements are going to be going up. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday, within the next 10, 15 years, if you aren't grandfathered in somehow, you might be having to take a 2-year course, a 2-year type of thing through a community college or something. I think the inspection industry's moved a long way away from paper checklists, were still popular when I started 14 years ago. And they've changed a ton in the last, say, 15 to 20 years. But I think that pace of change is going to continue or even increase. So I'm actually looking forward to this becoming a true profession, and in every sense of the word. And for home inspectors to actually be able to be paid based on the amount of liability they're facing.
Right.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. In my little soapbox here, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we can go into, just an average house in my area, $150,000 house, and we can be facing literally millions of dollars of liability. In that we don't. I'm an advocate of licensing. People probably don't think I'm crazy for that, but we don't have. I mean, we can have just anybody go into a house right now in our state and literally create or cause or miss something that could end up in hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars of lawsuit. and there's just simply no requirements.
Right. Well, we make the least, I always said this, of all the people involved, the lender, the realtor, we make the least amount of money, but take on the most liability. Get paid the least. I mean, how's that? With the most liability, you'd think we'd get paid more.
Because we made it too easy to get in, and we allow unqualified people, not we, but states or whatever, allow unqualified people to do home inspections. If they understood the cost of running a business, if they understood the liability that's involved and what could happen, they'd charge more.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to people, and I'm like, that are new, and I'm like, wow, do you know how much? And wait till you get hit with your first. It costs of running a business is more than most people think.
When I started running the business the right way, I was like, I couldn't figure out why I didn't have any money. So I started like actually trying to run the business the right way. And then I realized the cost of business, that's why I don't have any money. So
I hear you. Well, for me, it's the same, except I think it's my kids is the reason I don't have any money. But well, Dale, have you ever been thrown under the bus by a contractor? I know I have. How do you handle it? What advice would you give for others out there? Because if they haven't yet, they will be. You get that phone call. My contractor said that my home inspector should have seen fill in the blank.
Yeah, that's we're back to that last man in thing. It's important to, it's really important to remember that not all professionals are professional, especially when it comes to certain professions. In our area, there are quite a few HVAC contractors who are less than professional. Fortunately, there's 4 or 5 in our area that are absolutely honest, and they're great. So we always try and steer people the right direction. But once you get thrown under the bus, you got to make sure you're the one who gets the last word in. You have to be sure that you're the one, even though they're angry, you're the one holding their hand and protecting their interests. Get them steered to the right guy, and help them get it fixed for the least cost possible. Many people, once that happens, they just got it in their head that they're going to get a free furnace out of you, or a free whatever out of you, and that's not going to happen. I mean, you can't. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business. So part of what we do, again, is while we're talking to people, in our contract, in the standards of practice, which are referenced in the contract, in our driveway speech, when we're closing up at the end and giving our little speech, and then when we send out the report, in the cover letter for the report, we always reference what we're doing and what the limitations are. Again, it's just a way to minimize the number of phone calls so that when you do get thrown under the bus, they're not actually expecting you to pay. They're hoping you will. They're hoping you can make a lot of noise.
Right.
But you're not going to stop contractors from throwing them under the bus, because for them, it's 4 hours work. It's $2,000 profit. They got 2 guys out there at $20 an hour. So they spend $160 on labor. Furnace is what, $900, $1,000, and you're charging $3,000 for it.
Yeah.
Give me a break. And I literally will tell people, the real numbers. I said, so why do you think he doesn't want to fix your furnace when it's totally fixable and it was working at the time of the inspection? Because he's only going to make $140 for that service call. He says, I'll fix it for you, but I'm not replacing it for you. So I'm not afraid to write a check, but I'm not going to write one willy-nilly.
A ridiculous check.
Yeah, they're going to throw us under the bus. It's going to happen. It's going to be a constant thing. And so, again, a lot of it just simply comes back down to knowing your stuff, knowing how systems work, knowing what's going on, and having good contractors on your team.
Right.
So.
Good stuff. Well, my next question, I've given up on this I'm a real stoic person. I'm a big believer in stoic philosophy, which is like, there's things you can control and things you can't control, and you can't worry about the things you can't control. And one thing I realized I can't control is forums, home inspector forums. There's always going to be some crazy going on those forums. And I was hoping at one time that there wouldn't be, but I've just given up on it. I mean, and now it's like going full circle. It's like, I guess my big thing in life is just, hey, it's okay if we don't agree on everything, Dale. I'm not going to agree on everything. You're not going to agree on everything. But I'm not going to, take a shot at you, and I hope you wouldn't do the same with me. I mean, I respect the fact that you don't agree with me and vice versa. I mean, basically, I always say it's okay to disagree, but not okay to disrespect. Unfortunately, it gets into some personal stuff, and oh my gosh, it's just, and I'm like, sometimes I want to say something but I don't want to even get involved in this. Cause, I mean, and I've seen you've been kind of a voice of reason and some of that, and I did not follow my own advice. As you did see my tangle with Nick, but anyway,
with them too.
What's that? Anyway, what's your thoughts on the forums and things?
I guess I could give you a wish list, because for some reason people seem to lose their identity on inspector forums, and they lose all decorum. They go crazy. And there's
not everybody. We're not talking about everybody.
Not everybody, but there are some people. I think that some people are really thin-skinned, and they can't.
That's true.
They can't take constructive criticism, and they immediately turn to name calling and almost instantly. And that's going to help something. I don't know. But if you're not open and humble to the point where you can take criticism to improve yourself and your business, then, there's probably no help for you. I believe that when we're on forums, we should present ourselves as the professionals we're supposed to be.
Right.
I mean, a forum is not a bar, where you're slamming a few beers and having some good times and making fun of each other. I mean, it's totally different. I think people should remember that anything that you put on the internet will someday be exposed.
Right. Or somebody can screenshot it and show it to realtors, show it to your client, anything. I mean,
exactly. And I know you're not supposed to, and there's all that, but
it happens.
It happens, and people are going to do it, and they're going to hold it against you. So always try and keep yourself in that. My dream is someday I get on a forum and there's a heated debate that is actually operated like a debate, and we don't drop the name calling and all the other stuff. It would be, a
debate that is it's constructive if it doesn't go to name calling. I mean, I think differences are good in opinion, as long as everybody stays. I mean, that's good. That's how, if everybody thought the exact same way, this world would be a mighty boring place. But in doing so, you don't result to personal, because then it all just falls apart. And then everybody gets defensive and wants to fight. And,
I've actually posted questions and had arguments in the meantime while I'm still doing my research, and find out both people are wrong, and they're tearing each other up. And it's like, come on, guys. Hey, wait a minute. I found this. We're done. This post is over. Thank you. So,
but I don't want to leave, acting like we're self-righteous or anything.
No.
The forums are good, and you can get some really good. And there's some people on there that always help. I'm trying to think the guy out of
Charles Buell.
Yes.
Awesome.
That dude's awesome, man. He thank you. That's what I was thinking of. Always adding value.
I still have to learn.
Yeah, that dude knows his stuff, man. If all the listeners out there, be friends with Charles Buell or follow him. If you want to know how to operate on a forum, operate like Charles Buell. He always gives it good advice. He's always on the money. He's smart, and he's always helpful. He's always adding value, and he's just a good dude. I met him at Inspector World too. Nice guy.
No, I haven't met him yet in person, so I'm looking forward to it.
Really nice guy. Okay, so let's see. We're rolling down. We're almost done. I know you've got some stuff to do, and I appreciate your time, and I'm sure the listeners do too. And it sounds like your dogs are ready for some food back there.
Probably are.
Do you have fear-mongering contractors in your market, Dale? And what's your thoughts on
Um, we do. The hardest part about those guys is keeping up with who they are. There's literally guys that change their company names on a regular basis, and this isn't to knock everybody, but a lot of them will advertise super low prices and stuff on Craigslist and try and angle in that way. A lot of times it comes down to the same type of thing. I used to call it, they don't do it so much in the insurance industry anymore, but they'll come in and they'll talk about their one customer who didn't do whatever they suggested and then they died and things like that. And that seriously drives me insane. The problem is keeping up with them. So just trying to be rational and trying to, when somebody calls, just trying to talk them off a ledge sometimes even. Because somebody told them something, there's some slight staining on some attic sheathing, and it's only a couple square feet, and the entire house is filled with mold. I've had that scenario before. Literally, I always try and preempt those things when we do an inspection, but after the inspection, if something comes up, again, it's just the same thing, and we try and take care of them and steer them to quality contractors who are actually going to do the job properly and correctly, and protect their health and their safety. So.
Good stuff. Well, we talked about this a little bit in the pre-interview, Dale. What's the wildest, weirdest, or craziest thing you've ever found on a home inspection?
I could say that probably the craziest thing, well, maybe the scariest thing, or the two scariest things, and they are related, was one time I was checking a fireplace, the firebox, and checking the flue, and then I went to operate the damper, and it was kind of stuck, so I was working it real hard, just trying to see if it would work, because it seemed like it should work, but there was something on it, and I thought, well, maybe there's some debris in there, so I just kind of pulled my head back a little bit so I wouldn't get dumped on. And when I went to open it, the damper shifted sideways because it was broken, and there was a mother raccoon with 2 cubs in there.
Ooh, and I bet she was not happy.
There was a growl that I've never heard. I think it came from the bowels of the earth. It was like backing up, and and it was reaching down trying to get me, and I'm like trying to close the damper without it scratching me. It was great.
Too bad you didn't get a video of that. That would have been awesome, but I know taking a video was probably the last thing that was on your mind at the time.
If somebody was taking a video of me, I would have been on America's Favorite Videos.
Yeah.
Because I jumped, oh my goodness. So anyways, with that fresh in mind, about 2 weeks later, I'm going through a home and go up into the attic space. I pop the attic thing, the attic access hatch, and I'm climbing up my ladder, and I turn around with my flashlight, and there, standing like this, is a raccoon.
He heard about you.
Totally stuffed. I was down that ladder in one step. I was like a fireman going down a ladder. It was amazing.
Dude, you have like raccoonophobia now.
So now I rattle things when I do stuff before I do anything like that.
I'm going to get you a raccoon cap. I'm going to get you one of those Daniel Boone's. Just for you, Dale.
Gee, thanks. Make sure it has the little feet on it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So they kind of go back to the craziest, that's probably the craziest thing. And I just thought it was really humorous that like 2 weeks later, there's a stuffed raccoon in an attic with, of course, it had the reflective eyes in it. So it just freaked me out. So
oh, wow.
It was probably scarier than the real raccoon was. I don't know.
I inspected a house one time, and man, it had like mannequins and stuff, and it was just like one of those Bruce Lee movies with all the mirrors. It freaked me out. I just couldn't. I just kept thinking, did that thing move? Well, what's the craziest callback you've ever had, Dan?
Oh, people in Michigan are boring. Uh,
You didn't put my shower curtain back. I'm like, really? You called me for that.
I think the craziest callback I got was 3.5 years after I did an inspection. And it was a house with a crawl space. Exterior was insulated pretty well. The floors were insulated, and the dryer vent was venting into the crawl space, right into the insulation in the crawl space. And so this lady, nice lady, calls me up and says, I have $7,000 worth of mold and repairs to do in my crawl space because the dryer was ducting into the crawl space. And I'm like, if it was visible and it was obvious, I'm sure it was in the report, but give me a second. And I happen to be home. I says, can you hold on just a second? And I said, give me your address. I looked it up, pulled up the report, went to the appliance section. Dryer is venting into the crawl space. There's mold present.
Didn't even look at it. They didn't even look at it, did they?
And so then she went off on me afterwards. She was really calm at first. Then she went off on me and said,
because you made her a liar.
You didn't make any big deal out of it.
There you go. That's what's happening to us now. Oh, you acted like it wasn't a big deal. It's in the report. I mean, what?
It's in the report. It says there's mold and that you have to get it fixed. But the thing is when she went off, all of a sudden, I had looked at the house. So as she started going off, I'm remembering the entire inspection. We're talking 1,300 inspections ago.
Wow.
I remember the entire inspection and what a pain in the butt she was. And I was so surprised that she didn't call me 12 times. So I wasn't really surprised, but it was kind of crazy. So.
We get that too. And stuff's in the report. I had one 2 weeks ago that the pipe was disconnected. She's calling and dude, and it's a long story. She put the picture that the plumber took, and I looked at the report. We got the same picture, slightly different angle, but the same picture. And she's saying we missed it. And then she gives me this long sob story and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, it was in the report, though. You didn't read the report. I mean, what more can my guy have done? You know, anyway. Best part of your job and why? Worst part of your job and why?
Well, we've covered them both. Obviously, the best part of my job for me is every single day when I get up and I'm working either on the business or in the business. Every day when I get up, I know that what I'm doing is literally helping people achieve their dream.
Awesome.
And when that young couple gets the house and they already have a good idea how they're going to take care of it, what they're going to do, it means the world to me. The worst part of the job, it's always the callbacks.
Oh yeah, especially the crazy ones.
Especially the crazy ones. There's no way around it. So you just learn to deal with it. You never turn. I mean, when they're screaming and yelling, you don't turn them off. I'm taking notes, everything they said.
I'm drinking when they're. What was that?
Yep. Yep. No. Yeah. You're right. That is.
I would be upset too.
Rat poop is the most horrible thing you could absolutely find in the house. So when did you find the rat poop? Oh, we pulled the ceiling down. Okay. So. Yeah,
you pulled the drywall down. Sorry I didn't do that during my inspection, but the seller at the time would have probably been pretty mad.
Exactly. That was last week's call.
Best low-cost, no-cost marketing idea.
I already gave it away, but very seriously, look for local groups in Facebook. Charlotte is, downriver is just a small section south of Detroit, on the Detroit River. It's only 13 communities. We got 60,000 people who are a captive audience because everybody who does that, they always want to be helping. And that's the whole purpose of this site, is to help people find good people. So, look for that type of a group in your local markets or your local areas and just share with them. It's free or very inexpensive. Even if it's just a little bit of a motivational quote, but it's coming from your business page. So you're not selling anything, but you're just there. You're top of mind. Make sure your logo is on there and stuff.
Giving them value.
So that
You wake up tomorrow morning, you still have everything you have now as far as your equipment, room and board taken care of, but you're in a brand new market. You don't know anybody, and you got $5,000. What are you going to do in that first week to get out and know people?
So room and board is paid. So I could eat.
Equipment, all that stuff. No, all that stuff. Basically, you got $5,000 to market. Everything else is taken care of. What are you getting the best bang for your buck with $5,000? It's kind of a return on your advertising dollars. If somebody was just starting out in the business and they had $5,000, what would be, obviously get on one of those groups, but that's free. That's free. That's just time.
That's time. And when you're brand new, you got plenty of time to do that. If if I had 5,000 extra today, I would probably, I'd invest a portion of that into a good website, because things are going that way, and it's definitely going to have to be one that could go on your phone.
Yeah.
It's got to be a dynamic website. So I put a portion of that towards that. I wouldn't shoot all the money on that. People still like to read, and they want paper in their hands. So I get some help designing a good brochure. Obviously, a lot of cards. The types of giveaways that'll be a little bit sticky, like some pens and stuff. But you can do all three of those for under $1,000. I probably still have 2,000 left.
Buy a lottery ticket. No, I'm just kidding. Buy a whole bunch of lottery tickets. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you're still not going to win.
That's right.
I would say, so long as I had my business plan together and I knew what I was, then I would probably work to give some presentations in the top 5 to 10 offices, with maybe some unique giveaways. In our market in the wintertime, it's dark at 4 o'clock. Keychain flashlights, you can get them for less than a buck a piece.
Nice.
Trying to maybe buy 400 or 500 of those, because when you do those presentations, you only get a fraction of the people coming to them. But I would probably do an introductory type thing, and then try and show how and why I'm different, and give people an opportunity to use me.
Awesome. All right, we're down to the last 2 questions here. They'll probably be pretty quick. Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Nope.
All right.
That was good.
One question. This one could be short too. I don't know. Is there any question you'd like to ask me? And I'm not prepared, so I don't know. And if you don't,
actually, yes.
All right.
When you were trying to vet and find your first inspector,
okay,
how harrowing was that for you?
It was tough, because I did like most people. You hire your friends or your guys that you know, and I mean, the more I've learned is, and I think I got this. I can't remember who told me this. It's just always have somebody in training. Always be looking for talent. And I used to hear this. Well, when you're ready. To me, it's like it's kind of like the NFL draft. If there's talent on the board, take it. You can increase the marketing. You can never find a good person when you need them. You find a good person when you don't need them, in my mind. So if there's a good person, even if you don't need them, you hire them and you crank up that marketing. I always tell people there's like 2 levers we have control of in this business. And one is, the manpower or whatever. And then there's the marketing. And the marketing we have more control of. The manpower, sometimes that's supply and demand. And to me, if there's a good person on the board, just like on NFL draft day, a lot of them will tell you, I'm going to take the top talent. Even don't draft for position, draft for talent, sort of thing. Like Michael Jordan, basketball is on the board. You need a center. You better take Michael Jordan, because this is the one-in-a-lifetime player. You can always get another center, but I guess I went through a lot of mistakes, and somebody told me you don't finish with the ones you start with, and it's just you fail your way to success. I don't think I hit pay dirt until my 3rd guy. Honestly, the first 2 didn't work out, and
only one away.
Huh?
I'm only one away.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So just hang in there, keep working. And, there's this old story that I kept telling myself. Is in one of the Robert Kiyosaki books. This town needed water, and they hired these two guys to do it, to bring the water to this town back in the old days. And one guy was, hauling buckets, and the other guy just went away for a long time. So the guy who was hauling buckets had the market. He was hauling buckets to the thing, but the other guy went and he got some research, got a patent, came back and started building a pipeline. And pretty soon, eventually he could deliver more water faster, cheaper and the other guy started going faster, got his family and his kid, but he could never keep up. And I guess the moral of this story is a lot of times I would be doing an inspection, I'd be training somebody. And, when you train somebody, you're like, man, I could do this faster by myself. It takes longer to train. But then I would always ask myself, are you hauling buckets or are you building a pipeline? So, I would always say, you got to build a pipeline, and that's going to take more time on the front end, but on the back end, it's going to pay dividends. So I guess my question is, do you want to haul buckets or do you want to build a pipeline? I guess I don't. And believe me, there's no exact science, and someday I think my pipeline is a mess.
If there was an exact science, you'd be doing that.
That's right. That's right. Well, Dale, I appreciate your time, brother. Let's get you some love here before you leave. All the listeners, I know you got some value from Dale, so let's get him some likes on Facebook. Let's get him some follows on Instagram and some subscribers on YouTube. I think I got that all right. So let's tell him your YouTube channel, your Instagram feed, is that the right word? And how to find you on Facebook and your business. So they can go there and give you some likes, loves, and subscribes, and whatever else.
The business is AccuSpect Inspections on Facebook. In Trenton, I think there's a few AccuSpecs out there. So it's in Trenton, Michigan.
Okay.
YouTube channel is AccuSpect Inspections, and I believe Instagram is actually AccuSpect HIC for Home Inspection Company.
Awesome. If somebody wanted to know more about you, Dale, could they email you? I'm not going to ask you to give your cell number. Some people do it. I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? But your email, if they wanted to ask some questions or follow up on something you said, would you be willing to do that?
Sure. The general email is just accuspect@gmail.com.
Awesome.
ACCUSPECT@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Dale, you've been great, and I will catch you on the flip side, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Happy Valentine's Day. Please don't get in trouble. Go feed them dogs.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Thanks.